All right, we'll make a start. Firstly, welcome everyone, and thanks for taking the time to hear about building digital experiences that align to digital service standards. The lights are pretty bright here, so I could probably, you guys could probably leave the lecture theatre, and I probably wouldn't even know. But anyway, we'll go with it. But please don't do that, because what I want to achieve out of this talk today is to talk generally about the standards, in particular with a focus on the DTA's DSS 2.0, but probably most importantly is to provide some practical tips and some guidelines that you might want to take away with your next digital project build or service build. So just real quick in terms of the topics that we're going to cover today. So we're going to start off with a really quick introduction. I'll get into some context then, and in particular around digital service standards, in particular the what, the why of the standards. I have a really quick look at some of the initiatives that are going on worldwide regarding digital standards. As I mentioned, a focus on DSS 2.0, and the fourth agenda item is the crux of this, with a really deep dive into 2.0 and look at practical tips of application. I'll end with a recap, hopefully some time for some questions. And yeah, I am going to fly through items 1, 2, 3, and we'll have time for 5, but just to provide enough airtime for item number 4 and a deep dive. Having said all that, I'm more than happy to chat afterwards. There's the drinks tonight. Anytime offline you want to talk digital service standards, we can. So just really quickly, introduction. So I'm Paul. I am the COO of Salsa Digital, and I've been involved in Drupal projects for a dozen years now, and digital programs for a lot longer. I've been involved in some very large digital programs in government, mentioned on the slide here, like GovCMS, New South Wales 1CX, Victoria's Single Digital Presence, WA's wa.gov.au, and also some other large Salsa projects, or large, small and indifferent Salsa projects. So I guess I provide this as context to provide these tips around the application of the standard. Lastly is the fun fact. I am a 29-year member of Richmond for Australian Rules Football, so there's a game tonight. So if anyone's interstate, have never been to a game, you probably can't get a ticket, but I'd recommend maybe just walk over the bridge here. You'll see the MCG, and just have a walk around and see the atmosphere. It's pretty cool. I'll be there, by the way, so if that's not self-evident. Context. So when we think about digital service standards, we may ask, what's the point? Why have them? Well, firstly, to ensure user-friendly, accessible, secure and efficient services are designed and built. Also, to provide a framework for design and delivery decisions. And in the government context in particular, to promote cohesion and connection in government. So it sounds really easy, right? Well, not really. I mean, the aspiration is sort of easy to say, but it's much harder to realise. These are tricky problems. But the thing is, if we do have some guiding principles like the Digital Service Standard, we have some chance of success in achieving these goals. Without guidelines and principles, we may be flying blind and essentially making it up as we go along. So how do we apply them? This is what I want to explore in this presentation. Yeah, I thought it might be just interesting to take a look at other efforts around the world, other standards, just to sort of set a bit of a scene there. I took a bit of a look. It's not a exhaustive search by any means, but just to give you a feel. One effort is the UK effort, or the UK GDS, Government Digital Service. I list the sort of principles here. We won't sort of dive deep into those, but I do have a sort of a comparison slide which looks at these principles and the principles of the other geographies that I looked at. So we'll get to that in a minute. There's also a Scottish version. So this is the Scottish approach to service design. The United Nations has their UN Development Programme. There's the Canadian DSS. There's the US Digital Services Playbook. And as I mentioned, there's our own DTA DSS 2.0, which I really will dive into. But so many sort of efforts around the world, I started to think in particular sort of how are they similar? How are they different? And the good news is, and it's probably not that surprising, that there are many overlaps and synergies, and the different country with the different country efforts. This slide's really busy. I'm just trying to sort of put the various efforts together and group like principles. And what was sort of interesting is there is a lot of commonality. That's the sort of clustering of the green. But there's principles that are essentially exactly the same, and it's highlighted here. There's ones around know your user, which we'll get into in a minute. And there's also lots of grouping of principles that are very similar, and that's sort of these types of groupings that are marked by the left-hand side axis into themes. So having established that lots of sort of commonality in these efforts is sort of a good thing when we dive into the Australian flavour, because if we sort of understand that with a level of depth, then we've got a feel for what other countries are doing as well. I also thought it would be good to step back and understand, where the DSS fits in the ecosystem of Australian government digital policy. And it's actually one of 4 standards that all fall under the digital experience policy. So you see the policy at the top and the 4 standards. We'll get into the DSS in a minute. But so what are these other standards, and what are they trying to achieve? Well, the digital inclusion standard is about delivery of inclusive and accessible experiences. The digital access standard is about minimising and consolidating access points. The digital performance standard is about understanding and improving performance. So there are actually a lot of overlaps in these standards, and so the DSS principles have sort of blurring into the other standards, which is actually a good thing. So I thought, to be aware of these other standards and the digital experience policy is sort of good context to when we dive deep into DSS. So like I mentioned, spend time for the deep dive. Before that, where does the DSS come from? I thought it would be good to just have a little bit of a history. So DSS 1.0 has been around since December 2015. That original standard had 13 criteria. The DSS 2.0 has come on board in the last sort of year odd. It's only got 10 criteria, and they've got more focus, I guess, and in particular focus on accessibility, security, collaboration, and service connection. And so we'll go into the detail of the 2.0 offering. You see that sort of the 10 criteria on the slide here. That's what we'll dive one by one into. We'll look at tips and considerations for each. How I did this deep dive, and you'll see this through criteria 1 through 10. I started off with a sort of a contextual quote. Hopefully they're not too cheesy, but what I was really trying to do was contextualise the intent of the particular principle or guideline of the standard. The next thing I present is a what section, and this is largely lifted straight from the standard or summarised straight from the standard. And so, while it's informative, I thought the standard itself lacked in sort of how to apply the particular criteria or principle. So that's where I've got to the how and pro tips. These how and pro tips are based on mine and Salsa's collective experience in delivering digital services, provide some guiding lines for how to apply, when to apply, and other sort of situational based considerations to sort of leave some takeaways for each of the criteria. And yeah, like I mentioned, hopefully some of these takeaways are useful in your own sort of digital build or service builds, and you can take some stuff away for consideration. I also have for each one a why statement at the end of each criteria. And these are really to further contextualise how to apply the particular principle. So if we go into each criteria, so criteria number 1, have a clear intent. So what does this involve? Well, if you look up the standard, you'll see things like develop a business case for change, survey the policy landscape, etc. So my thing is, okay, how do I do that, or how do I practically do that? Well, things that I've seen well in build out of services and delivery are things like agree a success criteria. Entrench these success criteria in the project. Don't just have them as discovery deliverables, but refer to them ongoing. Ensure outcomes are solving problems. It's really important not to jump too quickly to technical solutions. Prototypes, yes, but too quick to solutions misses context and can narrow opportunity. Worst case may even result in a service that misses the mark. The intent should be an ongoing point of reference used in the project. So, why is this? Being clear on intent helps orientate the service and provides a reference point for decisions. Criteria number 2, know your user. From the standard, you'll see things like understand your users, test and validate designs, these types of things. So again, how? Things that I've seen work well is identification or identify user personas. And you have your primary personas, your secondary, maybe others. Document them. Use them in conceptual discussions. Also, we can use scaled user-centered design and user research. I've seen projects with very large and complicated user research investment, some with medium, some with small. Really adjust that level of effort to the complexity of project. Validate assumptions with conceptual designs which are taken to user test. Use clickable alpha prototypes, early beta releases, these types of things. These are really effective in building for the user or users. So why? Yeah, the importance to know your user was really emphasised by in the keynote of yesterday morning, where Nicola and I was presenting on humanising technology. Nicola presented the importance of designing services for the user, but more particularly the risks if you don't. And there was some great conversation afterwards in the questions, and I think if we had more time, we would have dived into that even more deeply. But we really do, the most usable service for a user is when it's designed with them in mind. Criteria number 3, leave no one behind. So what's this criteria involve? From the standard, you'll see, understand the diversity of users, understand relevant legislation and standards. So how? Well, things I've seen work well, use discovery and alpha phases to try to further discover personas. Continually ask, who have we missed? Consider cultural, language and socio-economic factors in the service design. Use accessibility tools during design and build. Commission independent accessibility audits. Ensure accessible content is used. So why? We need to consider all users to ensure the service is inclusive and accessible. And this was actually borne out a little bit with the talk yesterday from Adrian Redmond from DSS, where it was presented on accessible documents, which was really, really interesting talk. And anyone didn't see that, I'd recommend you look at the video because it was really excellent. Criteria number 4, connect services. The actual standard here is actually pretty light on detail, and it's got some sort of, broad statement saying designed to be interoperable or join up. So I think even more reason to sort of offer some sort of practical tips from the field, if you like. What I can offer is discovery is prime time for thinking about connection opportunities. If and how to leverage existing IP tools, approaches, start broad, don't narrow too quickly. Prove connection opportunities in the beta phase. Use proof of integration acceptance criteria. Tackle the most risky and complex stuff first. Consider if you can supply open data as part of your service, or if you could use open data in your service. Owning the service and its SLA is critical in connected services. A service product owner who is responsible for the service quality is key. So why? As much as possible, we need to aim to make government function as one. Connecting services can make this happen. Criteria number 5, build trust in design. So what's this criteria involve? From the standard, you'll see adopt transparent data handling, maintain a reliable service, these types of things. So how? Users' digital rights are not only a production thing. We need to ensure alpha concepts and beta releases are also aware of users' digital rights. Make a privacy and data use policy clearly available. Consider opt-in and opt-out user journeys. Typically in complex projects we have a solution design. This should be security first, and the service should always be secure by design. Maybe Essential 8 or ISM IRAP are in scope and need to be considered. Again, security first. Execute security formalizations and secure ongoing. So why? A useful, inclusive and transparent service will build users' trust and confidence. Number 6, don't reinvent the wheel. So no one's heard about that, right? No, I'm sure they have. We've all heard it. Don't reinvent the wheel. So in terms of the DSS standard, you'll see things like build once, use many, design for reuse, reuse data, etc. So how? Well, what I've seen work is have a consolidation mindset from the start. It's probably more a philosophy than a tip, but it helps as a point of reference or a principle to carry forward in a project. Reuse opportunities can be explored in discovery and alpha phases. Brainstorm reuse. Share, and if time and budget allow, build for the greater good. This can be really difficult in a project when we've got sort of budget constraints and time constraints, even direct accountabilities are not sort of shaped to build for the greater good. But we really should step back and identify the opportunity of the holistic benefit to taxpayers. Reuse, consolidation and sharing is a good thing. Use open standards and contribute where possible. So why? Adopting common platforms and patterns and approaches will deliver value for government and familiarity to users. Criteria number 7, do no harm. So what's this criteria involve? From the standard, you'll see protect users' digital rights. It's really similar actually to the previous criteria. Understand privacy, etc., etc. So how? Like the previous point, users' digital rights are not only a live thing, but also need consideration in alpha and beta phases. Give special consideration to users facing greater personal risk. Undertake a privacy impact assessment. Obtain consent where required. Have a clear data use policy. So why? To protect all users from adverse consequences. Number 8, almost there. Innovate with purpose. So what's this criteria involve? From the standard, you'll see consider emerging tech, If you're considering emerging tech, consider interoperability and backward compatibility. Be aware of new tech, etc., etc. So some tips on this. Map innovation and new technology to project success criteria. It'll provide more focus on what matters. Prove approaches the application of new technology in discovery, alpha and beta phases. Consider innovation spikes. Where we have an agreed amount of innovation, in innovation investment, we can explore novel approaches, but it can also provide guardrails for project trying to achieve its sort of core use. Helps balance creativity, exploration, and getting the core of the things done. Maintain a solution blueprint documenting innovative ideas. Document ideas which have been tried and used, tried and discarded, or maybe only conceptually identified. It's valuable to record the innovation. So why? Innovating with clear intent will help justify new approaches without stifling creativity. Criteria number 9 is monitor your service. The standard will talk to setting up a baseline of metrics, measuring these metrics. So how? Use discovery to start thinking about how to monitor. Collect metrics that matter. Report on the metrics. Don't just collect them. Reporting drives better service quality and improved services. So why? We want quality of service to be owned. We need monitoring and metrics to drive ownership. Criteria 10 is keep it relevant. From the standard, you'll see things like improve the service across its life, relate assessments. In terms of how to practically do this, test relevance early. Use beta to test effectiveness, or beta phase to test effectiveness. Again, put the service relevance in the remit of the service owner. Have a service roadmap. Own the SLA, or have the service owner own the SLA. All this results in a better managed service quality. So why? Relevant services remain fit for purpose, even as purpose changes. So that was a bit of a deep dive. As I say, I'm absolutely happy to talk more about that as we go. But in terms of recap and takeaway, if I could sort of encourage people here just to take 1 or 2 things away, maybe just consider each of the 10 criteria on your next digital project or service build. Determine if any of the pro tips are applicable. Maybe take a look at the why statements and ask the applicability question again to your own situation. But again, why do that? I started off by saying that building digital services that are user-friendly, accessible, secure and efficient is difficult. It is. But if we have a core set of principles to apply, we may have a tiny, tiny chance of realising cohesion and connection in government, or at least playing our bit in making it happen. I've got some references here, so the links to the policy and the 4 standards that I mentioned. The last thing at the bottom here is a DSS 2.0 checklist. Feel free to have a look at it. It is pretty broad, and I actually think the pro tips are maybe more practical, but it is a sort of a checklist of sorts to see how for your own self-assessment purposes. I really want to thank everyone for listening. I am totally genuine in an offer to speak offline at the drinks tonight, whenever it might be.